Good day to all. This is Sam here with you. We're Thursday, February 22nd. And as we do every day, well, not every day, sometimes I choose it, but most often what we'll do is we'll put the decision about what's going to be analyzed by video up to a vote amongst the members. And then we just run a poll and we get that tally, and that's how I end up choosing these coins to analyze. Now, today's overwhelming number one candidate for analysis was Cardano. I'm a little bit surprised, only because we've done this coin recently. There's not been much change here, but my hunch is we've got a good number of holders here that are looking for some signs of life that maybe this very long correction is over. I know this has been a very popular project and people did extremely well here. And sometimes there's this natural tendency to want to go back to a coin, a pair, a spread, something that you've done well in the past, and you're looking to see if you can reclaim that glory. And the market just doesn't work that way, sadly. I know that temptation. I know that sense of, I did so well on that. Maybe we go there again. You just got to be a bit more objective about it than that, I find. Not that I have all the answers, but that's just been based on my experience for what that's worth. So, it's pretty hard to argue with this. Clearly we have a 5-wave structure here, whether you wanted to bicker about whether that was the 3 or the 3 was up here. It's hard to argue with it as anything other than a completed 5-wave structure. So, this is all still correcting it, very long and painful if you're a holder. So just as we would with any completed 5-wave structure, and all I've done here is just wick off the absolute low, but I put the little dashed line there so I don't have to keep going off to that pivot. I can just grab from the low here, just get it hot, and look. So here we go. Now, again, so we've done this coin recently, so it's just a question of trying to get some pivot here that we can qualify to get a sense of whether or not we have a tradable event, and I just don't see it yet. I'm sure I've got people that are long-term holders here that are looking for signs of life so that they can just unclench their sphincter just a bit because they're worried about, where this is going. And it's hard to build a case here for this being over. I just don't see it. If you're long, it looks to me like there's more pain ahead. If you're looking for an entry, there's no reason to be anxious here because this looks like there's more downside. So now, on the assumption that we've got a 1-2, well, we know a second wave can certainly go as deep as the 786. In fact, it can go deeper than that. So what we can do is try and get a sense of where we are and how much more is likely to come. This is a common retracement zone here from an Elliott perspective, where you might see a retracement back to the prior area of the 3 and the 4. Right now, that makes the assumption that this is an accurate depiction here of this count, and that we have the 3 and 4 here. But if nothing else, you could certainly make the case here that you're just back in an area where you had support. Right, that was the indecision before it launched, and we've come right back to visit that. So we've dipped in a little bit here. Now, as an Elliott trader, it's to be a buyer here, it's hard to argue with this count. See, you'd be a buyer here looking, if you're just looking to either to try and catch the falling knife here, pick the bottom of this retracement, or you want to add to your position, average down. It's very hard to build that case as a solid, well thought out trade. There's just you'd be making the assumption that despite the fact here that we have a very clear 1, 2, 3, that we're just going to skip the 4 and the 5, just to help you out. I don't know that that's what you're thinking, but it would be very unusual for this to not complete in a 5th wave down here. Not that it's never happened before, not that it couldn't happen, but I would just tell you that, why, you're playing against the odds there. How about we just leave it at that? It's just, you're taking the wrong side of the odds. So why do it? Now, if you're looking to be a buyer here and you love this project, you want to be in, you could certainly make the case that you're back to long-term support. So this is a base building area. And you could start averaging in your price, anticipating that there might be, you might get a little pop here for a 4th. Well, maybe that's a small swing trade. I'm looking at an hourly here, so there. I mean, that's, there's money to be made there if you get the pivot here, if you get the turn off of this, whether we want to call it, you're trying to pick the pivot on the 3, you want to call it this prior resistance here, offering some support, this indecision, a base building. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can talk yourself into a buy there. It's easy to do. But, is it, as a swing trader, does it make a lot of sense? Well, I mean, look here. So, again, just pulling from low to high. Well, we saw all the reactions that you would anticipate. Here was the first reaction at the 50. Then, for whatever reason, you had this little spike. Reaction at the 50. Finally, it rolls over. So here was the one that was set up to be. This was all set up to be your C wave. And it just didn't happen. So you got to put that aside and say, well, what else could be going on here? Well, again, we would just start measuring, as we would with any set of swings that we have here, where we have good clean pivots. So here, I'm going to take this off just so we don't get too cluttered up here. So just swing high to swing low, currently proposed as an A wave. Well, we get a nice little 3 wave into a B. Whoops. We get that. Right here, right between the 50 and the 618, very reasonable spot, exactly where you might anticipate it. It's now digging into this, I'm trying to. So here's the algo target from that swing low to swing high. Here's the 50. Here's the target down here. You can see it all line up on the left, right? So we've come a little shy of it. Now, do we get there? Well, this could be the front run on it. So you could make that case that's why we're stalling a little bit here in conjunction with coming back to this base area back here. But really all it does is set up the potential for this to go into a 4 and a 5, which would take us down lower. So, certainly we could double bottom right at that algo target. That's not unreasonable. So then you start qualifying this and say, well, okay, well, we know potentially here we could have this bottoming as a 3. We go up for the 4, we come back down, and this could be a reasonable area here. Again, it's very consistent with this prior zone here, this base that we have hanging off to our left. So that's not unreasonable. You can draw a trend line here. Let's dig in here a little bit. So let me zoom in a bit more. So is there anything else that, so sometimes it's a matter of saying, is there something I'm not seeing? So I'll often suggest that you step back, go to a different time frame, strip your chart bare and start the count over. Does that help you? And I've done it a couple of times, trying to find some signs of life here. I've got people sending me charts, this on the 15 minutes saying, are we there? Are we there? Are we there? There's so many mixed signals when you go down to those smaller time frames that I would encourage you, particularly when you're trying to pick a hard pivot here for a low. I wouldn't base that decision off the 15-minute. That's just me. I personally wouldn't do it. But looking here now, there's a couple of things that are worth noting here. So clearly that was a reaction to the 618. We had a pretty good reaction there. So we don't want to discount that, but it just rolls over and it fails. So let me take this off. So we can start measuring this and say, well, do we have it right? Is that the 3? So just I'd grab the alternate projection tool and I'd work from my B high down to the proposed. I guess we'd be right there on it from the 2, and then we just start looking left. Do I have a good 3? Well, let me get that right on there. Okay, so we go. So this is interesting, right? So look here, we go just beyond the 100, right into a little hot box, just in front of the 618. It's hard. The higher probability zone for the 3rd is down here, right? But the confluence here, so we barely qualify it as a 3rd. You're a few ticks in front of the 618 and look at the reaction. But it doesn't go impulsive and ultimately rolls over. But it's difficult to count that as anything other than a 3rd. It's slightly, but only slightly, but it is longer than the 1st. And that's me even working off of the potential, what may well be a truncated 5th there. So I'm taking the higher pivot there. That was a nice little trade. Nothing wrong with that. So, but knowing that that's there, now, so that would play as a 1, 2, 3. We get an A, B. We get a 3 wave into that. So let's measure it and see if there's anything. Does it tell us anything? So if I pull right to it, well, we go to the 786 to the tick. Now, granted, that's extreme for a fourth. No question about it. Right? That's extreme. And you get that's a wick that spikes up to get it. So from an algo perspective, they did reverse there, right? But you could, so as I've said many times, what'll happen is the algos that were written to sell that, they start at the 50, now they flip. So again, that doesn't mean they go long there. That just means they wait for the next 50, and that failed as well. So you can see the algos are struggling in here as well. So all they would do, let's see if I can take this off here. So they would just pull here. So it's not that they go long here. They just worked the next 50. So we would go from pivot low to pivot high. Okay, and you see here there was a last stand to try and get it here. So they start buying here at the 50, supporting, defending, and it breaks here. So again, so they've lost twice now. Two losing trades. So what do they do next? Now, they don't go short there. They just reposition for the next set of swings. So then we go down to this proposed low. Here, now they get it. See, so they sell the 50 here. Here's their target. Here's their second target. So eventually, that's the thing, right? So you have to know what they're doing, because eventually they get on the right side of it. That's why it's purely mechanical. There's not a guy going there, oh shit, man, I lost money on that last one, and I lost money on that other one too. I'm not sure I can pull the trigger there. That's the beauty of just having an algorithm do it. Eventually, it gets on the right side of it. So what are we trying to do? We want to be aware of that, but we want to just try and tuck in behind them and use the Elliott wave to see if it can, we can avoid the first loser, and say, okay, well, if that's going to play as a 3-4, so it's a diagonal. Okay, so let's put the wave on just to make that point. So you see, it's still a 5-wave structure, but it's a diagonal. So look at it. All right, so. It's, that's unusual. I granted, that's unusual. So, but it's still 1, 2, 3, big 4. That was a spike for whatever reason. Who knows what caused that. But now we're coming down here trying to find the 5th down here. So is that a pretty looking symmetry into a diagonal? No. It's not. It's choppy. This looks too short relative to this. There was some complexity here. This is just a straight rip up. It's not the prettiest count, but it's there, so we can't ignore it. So let me take the wave off of that. All right. So where are we now in the count? So we know that potentially here we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4. So the anticipation is we finish with a 5 wave to give us our 5th. So just looking here, so we get this down. So you could certainly, there's certainly a clean 5 into that as a potential 1. Here's the 2. Algos sell it, right? They just sell the 50, and then down we go. All right, let's dig in there a little bit more. So let me take this off. We know here we're to and through the golden zone. I'm going to mark this down here as the 786, so I can take this off, declutter the chart. Okay, so we still have algos that sold at this point, have not hit their target yet. Where are we in that structure? Well, if this is a 1-2, again, hard to argue that. Hard to argue against that. Certainly sets up that way. So let's work from we do it 2 ways. Come here if I can get that hot. So here as a 1-2, right? 618. Negative 618. So that plays. So then let's measure it here as it relates to the length of the 1 projected from the 2. So if I pull it over, we go the 1-2-7-2 to the tick, right? Not to be discounted. Square root of 1618. It's a very, very technical pivot. 1, 2. It's good 3. So what's next? What's likely next? Well, we're going to look for 3 waves into our 4th. So do we have the start of it? I know that's hard to see, but let's just get the pivots drawn. So if I'm working from the 2 to potentially that technical low there on the 3, well, where am I looking for my 4? Anywhere in this zone. Now, interestingly, we get a pivot here. You'd want to wick that off because we knew that was technical. Right, so we can take that off. So here's our 3. So potentially we've got prior support to offer us some resistance right in front of the 38.2. So, again, that's so. Is there a buy there? Let's get to. I want the arrow. Is there a buy there? Just to try and get to that? Is that enough? That's your call. That wouldn't be enough for me to try and buy the falling knife here, to try and get that little pivot, that little move. It doesn't mean you can't make money, but does that, how much do you love that? Enough to put money at risk? Well, you can a little A, B, this may be shallow. It looks like it's trying to base. There's the Vegas wave in here holding it. Here's the 23.6. That would certainly be viable as a potential 4. Open this up a little bit more. Do we have a little A, B, C going in? Looks like it wants to say shallow. I mean, it just looks, let me take this off because that's a little squiggly. It just looks weak. Looks weak. So here, here's another giant. Look at the Vegas wave just containing this all the way down. Look at the distance we have from the Vegas wave. Do you really want to be trying to pick the bottom in there? I don't. So let's look at this. So if we got something up here, I'm not saying to short it. I don't want to short. Rarely am I looking for shorts in crypto. Not that they're not there, but it's just not how I try and trade it. So you would anticipate that if you get something like this, would that make sense in the larger context? If we come down again here, well, there's our algo target. I mean, that certainly makes sense that would give us the nice 5 waves to complete. I can zoom out here. That would give us this nice, so we get a hot box down here. So we have 2 algo targets sitting down here that would help complete that pattern. That's what we're looking for. Again, it's always a matter of trying to combine price, algo trading, Elliott count, fib swings. Is anything we can learn from the market geometry? Well, there's a pretty tight little channel we could draw on that. So just working from my 2 low to hypothetical as my 4. That certainly would be, that wouldn't be surprising that we come up here to the 38, hit that prior support, offers some resistance, we go back down one more time. Then you have a full combination of all the variables that we look for: pattern, price, geometry, fib zones, algo targets. It's all there. Until we get that, trying to buy this, I think, is, I don't know why you would. You're trying to trade from the 3 to the 4? There's just not enough meat in that. Why are you putting your money at risk to try and get that little swing? Let the thing complete. Then, now again, this is not a load the boat down here, but if we get this kind of action, if we get this little roadmap here, this is certainly a place where you could start buying. I wouldn't put a full position on here, but you would definitely be in a zone, and then staying consistent, we're still right back relative to this box here, this area of indecision, this prior support zone. Look how that all lines up. So you got a lot of things is suggesting that the better thing to do here, if you're not in it, is wait to get this to complete a nice 5 wave, and then look for the 1-2 coming out of there. You don't want to try and pick the low, which a lot of people would tell you that's no reason to try and pick the low, because if you come out of that with a 5 wave, you're just going to wait for the 2. Right now you've got the kind of thing that I will often try and encourage you to consider, because if you get the pivot down here, now you've got risk reward that is so favorable, because if this low is taken out, if you can enter here at the 50 or between the 50 and the 618, you have a clear pivot here to tell you when you're wrong. Do you get a higher low? If you get the higher low, then you could be off to the races here. Then you might have the 1-2, and there's your 3. Right? Now you got a runner. Now you picked the pivot. Good for you. You got your pivot low. You had a technical low. You waited patiently for it. Now you've been rewarded. You took the low risk, high probability, good risk reward trade rather than trying to buy into the 3. I just don't know why you would do that, right? I mean, I know it's tempting, and this is a great project, and people want to be in it. I'm just, as a swing trader, that's wishful thinking. That's usually not how the market pays you. The patience, probabilities, waiting for things to set up, that's when the market pays you. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.